long time ago, before my life as a monster hunter, I had gone camping with my family to a place that we went every summer. I had been going camping with them for years at that point. I must have been 16 at the time. It was an excuse for all my family from different parts of the state to get together in one place and catch up, spend time together. The normal place that we reserved had already been booked, so we had to camp at a different site, a little deeper into the park and more off the beaten path. At the time, this didn't seem like a bad thing. In fact, it would give us more space to ourselves and for the kids and cousins to run around without fear of bothering any of the other campers. Everything had been going well, the normal. Hey, how are you? How have you been? What have you been up to? Kind of catching up. I remember having a good time until the third night we were there. It was about 2 in the morning when I was awoken by blood-curdling screams. I immediately jumped up in my tent thinking a bear or a cougar or some other predator had come into the camp and taken one of my family members and they were being eaten alive. I rushed out of my tent. The scream happened again, but as I got out of the tent, I saw nothing. Everyone was still in their tents, quietly and peacefully sleeping. My heart was racing. I scanned the campsite, unsure if I had been dreaming. I had heard the second scream after I was awake, though. I couldn't be dreaming. I stood there, just outside my tent, my ears perked up, listening for another sign that I wasn't hallucinating. Then one more scream rang out, a cry for help. Goosebumps ran up and down my arms and shivers froze my body. It was coming out of the forest. It was real. I wasn't asleep. I looked back at the other tents and still no one was awake but me. I stood there listening and shivering for another 10 minutes at least, but the forest had gone silent. I decided to go back into the moderate safety of my tent and wait till morning till I told anyone about what I had heard. The next morning I told my parents and any one of my family members that were willing to listen. They all agreed that I most likely had a nightmare, especially if no one else had woken up or heard anything. I knew I wasn't crazy. My body had a physical reaction to the screams I had heard. I could still hear it all loud and clear. Later on that day, I decided I had to prove to myself and my family that I wasn't making it all up just for attention. I went out into the forest where I was sure I had heard the screams coming from. It hadn't been long before I came upon something that sent my fears reeling. Making my way through the trees, I came upon a dome-shaped hut made out of thatched sticks and dying trees. It was too large to be something kids had made on a whim. This was a thought-out construction, made for staying in for long periods of time. Normally I would have thought, oh cool, a new place to play, a fort to hang out in, but this wasn't very inviting structure. It was giving off dark vibes, and my intuition was telling me to turn and run as soon as I saw it. The forest seemed to darken just around the hut. My stomach tightened as I got closer to see what it really was and who might be in there. I couldn't see inside the hut. The sticks were woven so tight that no light seemed to creep through them and illuminate the interior. A puff of smoke, as if from a cigar or cigarette, came streaming out of the darkness. I stopped in my tracks. There was someone inside. Could they see me? I sure as hell couldn't see them. Then another stream of smoke crept out of the hut. The smell from the smoke filled the trees around me. It wasn't any type of smoke I had smelled before. It smelled of rotten leaves, rancid food. It may not have been a cigar at all. Someone might be cooking something awful. I was going to make a run for it. I turned to run back to the campsite when I was suddenly grabbed by someone. I didn't get a good look at who it was, and it all happened so quickly and forcefully. I was overpowered and being gripped and pushed off into the trees. I couldn't fight back, and I was in a state of shock until I heard the man say, "Shh, it's okay, I'm on your side." He knelt down and forced me down to the ground with him. Getting a good look at him for the first time, he looked like a park ranger, but a park ranger that was about to head into a war zone. It all looked legit enough that I felt a sense of calm take over the shock and anxiety I was wrapped up in. He was looking back at the hut, so I looked back at the hut, and the smoke was now pouring out of its only entrance. "Where are you camped?" he asked me. Like a football field away? That direction?" I pointed. "Can you run fast?" His eyes were still fixated on the hut. Yeah, if I need to. Run back to your camp as fast as you can and don't say anything about this to anyone, okay? I got it from here. It's under control. He looked at me for a second with the most serious eyes. Yeah, okay, I nodded. Go! I jumped up and sprinted back towards the camp in the straightest line I could manage. My lungs burned, but I just kept running. When I got back to the camp, my body was gasping for air, my muscles burning, and my family looked at me puzzled. Sweat pouring down my face and scratches up and down my arms, I looked over at my family who were starting to show a bit of concern at the scene. Just out for a run, I said to them, trying to defuse the situation. They all stared at me for a second until my uncle said, You don't run, making everyone laugh and return to whatever they were doing before I popped out of the woods. I never told any of them what I found in the woods and the strange events that occurred. It was clear that they were just going to brush it off like my other story. And they had already made up in their minds that I was nothing more than an overactive kid. I knew what I had seen and heard and felt. It was the spark that lit something inside me. I had peeked behind the curtain and had a glimpse of just how mysterious the world can be. This curiosity, since, has driven me and my entire course in life, and it really was the beginning of my life as a monster hunter.